Okay, shall we go?
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. So today we're going to discuss the Masters in Science in the field of space science that we've put together at Hong Kong U. So with us today is Professor Quentin Parker, who's the Director of the Laboratory of Space Research, the LSR, and Director of the program. And I'm Dr. Pablo Parkinson, also in the Physics Department and Laboratory for Space Research, and co-program director. Any questions that you have at any time, you can email us at mspace@hku.hk, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So,
we should also introduce Meng Su and Shizhong, who are also here from the Physics Department of the University of Hong Kong, who are fluent Mandarin speakers and can answer any questions perhaps to those students who feel more comfortable asking questions in Mandarin.
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Thank you, Meng and Shizhong, for attending. So in slide 2, I just want to give a brief background about space science. We all know that space science is constantly in the news. Almost every day we hear stories. So even these days where it seems that everything we read in the news is about the virus, just 2 weeks ago, there was a launch of the penultimate satellite of the Baidu network. The Baidu network is China's equivalent of GPS. The last satellite in this network will be launched in May. And China, of course, has had a huge growth in space science recently in all sorts of areas. So in astrophysics, for instance, there's the Dampi mission, which Meng has played a big role in, studying dark matter potentially in the universe. And then there's also in planetary science, of course, we've probably all heard about the Chang missions to the moon. And China, of course, has bigger plans to go to the moon, eventually send people to the moon, even beyond the moon to Mars. And of course, other countries like the US continues to invest a huge amount in space. And in fact, perhaps prompted by China's big successes with the moon, recently announced a new plan called Artemis to fly people to the moon, the surface of the moon. So in slide 3, I want to talk about what some people are referring to as the new space age, which is what we're in right now. So, of course, we've just had the 50th anniversary of the moon landings. So, with this anniversary, there were many stories in the news. I like this one from Time magazine. They recreated the cover that they had back with the original moon landing. And they did a new cover. And I think this is quite interesting because it points out the differences between what was going on 50 years ago and what's going on now. And The Economist also had a cover issue about the 50th anniversary of the moon landings. And I like this quote from The Economist because I think it really encapsulates some of the differences between the current space age and the previous 50 years. It says, the next 50 years will look very different. Falling costs, new technologies, Chinese and Indian ambitions, and a new generation of entrepreneurs promise a bold era of space development. And that's exactly right, I believe. So let's move on to slide 3. As the quote says, one of the key differences between the current space age and the previous one is that now there's big companies involved. It's not just governments. It's not just the US and the Soviet Union, or even now the US and China, Europe. There's big companies that we've all heard about, like SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin. Many of these, of course, started by billionaires. But there's also a lot of companies that some people may not have heard of in China. The ones I mentioned before in the US or Europe, but there's also Link Space, which is a Chinese company based just across the border from us in Shenzhen. And they're doing a lot of the same things that SpaceX is doing, reusable rocket technology. Also, there's DFH Satellite Company, one of our partners, and we'll talk about them a little bit more later on. And they're producing a huge number of satellites. In the picture, that is the largest satellite launched by China. This was launched just last December, 8,000 kilos. So there's a huge amount going on. And because of all this, because of the role of industry, there are some people who say that the world's first trillionaire is actually going to make their fortune in space. This was mentioned in a Goldman Sachs report on space science. Moving on to slide 4. So because of all this, of course, there's lots of jobs in space science. So this is just something I pulled up just yesterday and today, actually. So if you go on a web page like LinkedIn, for instance, you find that today, right now, a company like SpaceX is looking for about 1,000 people. They have 1,000 jobs advertised. Other companies have more. There's even dedicated web portals just dedicated to space science jobs, careers in space. But in China too, you look up some of these web portals, this one in particular, you have more than 4,000 jobs. And in fact, that's not surprising. Space science is a huge and booming industry. So China Aerospace and Technology is the prime space contractor for this Chinese space program. They alone employ almost 200,000 people. So the space industry in China as a whole probably employs about 1 million people. Moving on to the next slide. So there's obviously a huge market. There's a huge market for all sorts of space-related industry. This market, for instance, has been estimated a couple of years ago to be worth about $350 billion. This includes all sorts of things like satellites, launch, all sorts of things. But if you project into the future, various companies have done this. Morgan Stanley estimated that in 2040, it'll be worth $1.1 trillion. All these are US dollars, by the way, not Hong Kong, US dollars. Bank of America Merrill Lynch forecasts even more. In 2050, this will be worth $2.7 trillion. Now, in the US, there's something called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They do sort of estimates of where the jobs are, the job growth, and these are all parts of what we would broadly define as space science, astrophysics, astronomy, astrobiology, planetary science, engineering, and look at those job growth rates. So there's huge number of jobs. Number 6, slide 6. So obviously there's also huge investment opportunities. So it's not just people working for a big company, there's also a lot of new companies coming online. So the plot on the left shows the projection that I mentioned of the $1 trillion, but on the right, what it shows is the number of companies that work in space industries, if you like. So this is what showing is what I was describing earlier. So in the last 10 years, there's been a huge growth from almost 0 companies working in space to about 500 worth over $20 billion. So there's actually some funds specialized only in space industry. That's how big it's becoming. Now in China, the Chinese government has recognized this. And so back in 2014, they changed the law to make it possible for private companies to build, launch satellites, and basically develop these space startups. And so they want to also get in on this action. Slide 7. So there's a number of these startups coming up, a lot of very exciting and new companies, and some of them are catching up rapidly with some of the other companies I mentioned. So there on the bottom right, you see, for instance, less than a year ago, Link Space had this successful launch and landing of a reusable rocket. This is exactly what SpaceX is developing. And there's a number of companies popping up all the time. So moving on to the next slide. So now I want to motivate why you would want to come and do this program at Hong Kong U. So we feel there's basically 3 strong reasons. One is an attractive location, and I'll explain a little bit more what we mean by that. Second, we think we have the relevant expertise for this program. And 3, we're strongly motivated. There's a very strong motivation for doing this. So let's move on to slide 9. Now, why is Hong Kong attractive? Of course, apart from the beautiful skyline we all know and love, Hong Kong is still the gateway to China, but Hong Kong U is also a top elite university. It's extremely highly ranked. It's very, very selected. It's very international, as Hong Kong is. So we have about 10,000 international students, and we're ranked very, very highly in terms of internationalization, and we have a huge number of highly reputable scientists, about 120 top 1% scientists in the world. And our rankings reflect this. So
that includes you, Pablo, as well, by the way. You're a top 1% scientist.
Okay. So moving on to slide 10. So there's a strategic rationale for this. So Hong Kong U has a very clear goal and strategy, which is encapsulated in something called the 3 I's: internationalization, innovation, and interdisciplinarity, all coming together to create impact. And so in terms of internationalization, I just mentioned, so last year we were ranked #1 in the world as the most international university. Of course, we are considered by all rankings to be the top university in Hong Kong. But more than just Hong Kong, we consider ourselves Asia's global university. And space science encapsulates a lot of these things. It's international, of course, but it's you need to be innovative, and you need to bring a lot of different people to try to basically have a huge impact. So this is one of the reasons that motivated us to create this program. Next slide, slide 11. Slide 12. So looking beyond the university as a whole, at Hong Kong U, we have the Laboratory for Space Research, which was founded a few years ago. And we have been partnering up with a lot of elite space science institutes worldwide, but primarily focusing, of course, on mainland China. And so this is a list of our current partners. I won't read through the list, but you can go on our webpage, www.lsr.hku.hk, and you can read about all our partnerships, our goals, our projects, etc. And so this program, a lot of the focus of it basically benefits from these partnerships that we've been establishing over the course of the last few years. And so moving on to the next slide, slide 13, I'm not going to talk about all the partners, but I did want to focus on 2 key partners, key in the sense especially of this program. So the first partner I want to mention is Keqiang University. This is for several reasons. One reason is that they have what is considered by many to be the leading microsatellites research center in China. Now, Keqiang University, of course, is one of the leading universities in China. They've also been moving up the world rankings very rapidly. So you can see there on the right, this is just the QS world rankings, but I'm sure others have done the same. So they're almost top 50 in the world, and they have a long list of faculty members who could potentially participate in the program. Several of them have already committed to teaching some of the key courses in our program. Slide 14, this is the second partner that I'm going to mention, Nanjing University, which is considered by many, I guess, the top, if not the top, one of the 2 or 3 top universities in space science and astrophysics in China. And again, like Keqiang, it's also a global elite university. This is the QS World Rankings in natural sciences specifically. It's considered 60th in the world. And again, like Keqiang University, we have some faculty members from Nanjing University who will be teaching and participating in this program. So you will get to benefit from their expertise. With this, I think I will end the first part of the talk. We thought we would have a brief pause before Professor Parker discusses some of the more details of the program. But if anyone has any questions, you should feel free to raise them now. Otherwise, of course, you can always email us at mspace@hku.hk. So let's pause maybe for a minute or 2 and take questions, and then Professor Parker can continue.
I think one point, just while we're waiting, if nobody's raising anything, is that slide where you talked about 4,000 jobs. That comes from, I think there are, according to Meng Su, there were 20,000 CVs submitted for those 4,000 jobs. So what that's basically saying on a pro rata basis is that that's a 25, you've got a 25% chance of getting a job. With 4,000 vacancies and only 20,000 people applying for them, that's a pretty high success rate that you could enjoy. So I think that just shows the kind of opportunities that are out there for a program such as this.
It might also indicate that you have a lot of these jobs and not necessarily the sufficient people with the expertise to
Yes,
basically
exactly.
get qualified to apply for them.
Exactly. Well, if there's no questions and there's nobody saying anything, we might as well move on. So if you could do the next slide, Pablo. So this is just the course structure that we've put together. And as you can see, there is a detailed leaflet on the program that the Department of Physics is running. This is the first taught postgraduate program from our department. And we're very excited by it, and we think it's got fantastic potential. So there are some compulsory courses. There's a capstone project, which is like a mini research project. And then there are elective courses where there's a number of elective courses and you just have to choose 3 of those to make up 18 credits. So the total number of credit points you need to graduate with this Master of Science is 60 credits, 60 credit points. So as you can see, the compulsory courses are made up of courses like space flight propulsion, introduction to space weather. By space weather, it means, what is the environment like there out in space where all these satellites have to operate? The atmosphere doesn't just finish with a hard boundary. The atmosphere just gets thinner and thinner and thinner as you get further and further away. So, low flying satellites are still encountering drag from the very thin atmosphere that's still up there, and that can result in degradation of the orbit, which you'll need to correct. So there's all sorts of things like that under space weather. And also space weather means the high ionizing radiation and particles emanating from the sun and from other astrophysical phenomena that can have an impact on the operation of your satellites, etc. So that's SPSC 7002. Then we have remote sensing. This is something that China has a big say in. It's got a lot of satellites up there that are looking down at the Earth rather than looking out into space. And it's all about, the remote sensing industry, the remote sensing capabilities and technologies, and how these are evolving and changing with time, and the kind of role globally that this plays in monitoring climate change, in monitoring environmental degradation on the planet, and also in hunting for resources on the planet. Then you have radiation detection and measurement. Again, it's a very harsh environment out there, so you need to have the technology to detect, understand, measure, and quantify the kind of threats there might be to your satellites out in space, whether they're orbiting around the Earth or whether you're sending them into deep space. Then we have an interesting addition in something space science entrepreneurship, because we believe that any student that might be enrolling in this course at least has to have some basic understanding of how the space economy, the space ecosystem is evolving and adapting in the 21st century. So I think space science entrepreneurship also gives you insights into how this is working. And we have 2 excellent adjuncts in the physics department who've come from industry and from the business field, Greg Lai and Stephen Chung, who are experts in discussing and explaining the importance and impact of entrepreneurship in this strongly emerging industry. And then we have small satellite design. That is sort of motivated by the fact that what you used to be able to do in a satellite the size of a bus, you now do in a satellite the size of a fridge. And what you did in a satellite the size of a fridge, you're now doing something called a CubeSat, which is something maybe just 10 centimeters on a side for a 1-unit CubeSat, although usually there are a few units in size. So the future of a lot of the work in space is through small satellites, microsatellites, nanosatellites, etc. And hence this also talks to our collaboration with Keqiang University. Then you have the capstone project, where each student will have a bespoke research project that will be supervised by one member of staff who's teaching into this program. And so that's an exciting part of the project. This will normally be done in the summer term, but it does depend on individual students' needs, especially those that are part-time. And so these will often be done in parallel, perhaps with an internship that there may be, and we'll talk about that a little later. Then you have the elective courses. Some are specifically created for this course, and they're the ones with SPSC in front of them, and others, like that have STAT and ELEC in front of them, are those that are offered by other departments and other faculties. As we said, this is a very much an interdisciplinary offering, and so we're covering a broad range of things that will give you a very good base underpinning in the requirements of these industries going forward. And so you might need to understand, vast amounts of data coming from these satellites. You need to understand about advanced statistical modeling. You need to understand about spatial data analysis. In the electronic engineering, you need to understand things like pattern recognition and machine learning, digital signal processing, data compression, etc. So those are the things that other departments and faculties are offering. So these courses already exist, but they're being incorporated into our offering. And then, of course, you have the other SPSC electives, including things like project management, which might be a good one to do with space science entrepreneurship if you're more interested in the business side of space industries rather than the technology, engineering, and science side. And you have other things like big data, AI, and machine learning, introduction to space plasma physics. Again, these are kind of elective courses that interested students can choose from. Okay, next slide, please. This is the staff list, and we put together a very committed group of scientists and academics mainly from the University of Hong Kong, but as Pablo mentioned, from Keqiang University and Nanjing University too, but also, as you can see there under other, some of the leaders in the field that we've got outside of these three universities. And one, for example, is Professor Dennis Bastieri, who is a collaborator of ours through the Padova CISUS MOU we have with them. He's a 1,000 talent scholar based in Guangzhou, but also from Padova CISUS, our major partner. And he's going to be teaching microsatellites and space science as his area of expertise. Then we have people from Europe as well in Madrid, and also Pisa, again in Italy. And also we have our very own Dr. Sajadi Said Alvareza. We call him Abdi, and he was in the LSR and Hong Kong U. He's now about to start an academic post at Sun Yat-sen University in the GBA, but his expertise is a world leader in astrochemistry and astrobiology. So anyway, we have, as you can see there, myself is there, and we have Meng Su teaching there, also who's on this Zoom meeting. And then we have people like also, of course, Pablo and Stephen Ung, who's another member of our physics department, and Michael Pittman, and people are in the Department of Earth Sciences, and people like Sean Wright, but also especially Dr. Joseph Machowski, who's also a world leader in remote sensing and exploitation of mineral deposits on extra planet, outside the Earth, on asteroids and in places like Mars. So we have a really good selection of scientists at the top of their game who will be teaching you these courses. Next slide, please. Now, Hong Kong U has something called the Keqiang Institute for Research Innovation, based up in Hongzhou in Keqiang province. And we have strong connections with them and strong connections with Keqiang University. So it's possible that part of this aspects of this course, students will visit Hongzhou and visit both Ziri, but also Keqiang University campus to have some hands-on experience by looking at their laboratories where they're manufacturing and designing microsatellites. So that's a wonderful opportunity for some of our students to not only visit there as a class, but also internships that can be done up there as well. Next slide, please. Now, as said in the first part of the talk, it's a very strongly emerging business behind space science and space technologies and exploitation of the near-Earth environment and further afield. And a lot of companies and a lot of even state actors are involved in driving this demand, and a lot of that demand is in the services and the data that all these satellites are generating. Even in Hong Kong last September, there was a very first Hong Kong Aerospace Technology Financial Forum, where a lot of members of industries and a lot of investors and a lot of government leaders were present at that forum. I was invited. My signature is sort of one of the non-Chinese ones right at the top left on its own in that image in the bottom left-hand corner. And it was a very interesting meeting to be at, because it's the real first time that Hong Kong investment entities and businesses and the government are really starting to seriously look at the space industries as a huge future growth area for the SAR of Hong Kong. Next slide, please. So, of course, we've done market research before we launched this TPG, and we looked into what is attracting potential students to a program such as this. And First of all, we said, how interested would you be in learning more about it? And most students said that did reply, obviously seemed to be strongly interested. The most important criteria they had for deciding was, apart from teaching quality and our reputation, were the opportunities that there are, things like internship opportunities, a reputation of some of our partners, the connections there might be with governments, etc. Next slide, please, slide 21. So this just shows you the areas that students are interested in, and apart from the gender distribution and where students got their undergraduate degrees. And then, of course, you can see that you've got students doing mainline physics, perhaps some of them doing astrophysics as well, but 45% of the students had a basic physics degree background. Quite a lot, over a quarter, had engineering background, some had earth sciences, and others that include all those other topics you see there, and including students with a strong mathematics background as well. Then the related activities these students might want to move into in terms of future career prospects, you see there's quite a mix. There's quite an even spread between space exploration, experiments, satellite developments, communications, rocket operations and technologies, etc. So that's good, because a lot of activity and a lot of opportunities are in all of those areas. Quite a few students look like they're expecting to be moving in to the space industry for their employment in the future, well over half, 57%. And the kind of technologies they think are going to be important in the future, well, right at the very top is artificial intelligence, which really comes as no surprise. But then, of course, computing, which is related to that, and machine learning, and data visualization, and data analytics, and big data, all of that is part of this. And if you actually look at which companies people want to work for, then the thing that's coming out from this is a lot of people are now not just looking to NASA and to SpaceX, sort of thinking of going onto a PhD or going and joining European Space Agency, but also looking at what the mainland is offering now, which I think is where the big growth opportunities will be in this part of the world. Next slide, please, slide 22. Okay, so good news is that we've been very successful in persuading our partners. I mean, when we say partners, we're not talking about just a casual relationship. We're talking about these serious mainland and global partners with whom we have established a formal memorandum of understanding. So this is like a two-way commitment. And from these MOUs, from these partners, we've able to get about 10 scholarships of $50,000 each for 1 year enrollment from BISME, which is one of our major partners, CSU, and Guangda, and of course LSR itself. So we're offering a range of scholarships. These will be awarded primarily on the basis of academic excellence, but also academic excellence combined with financial hardship. Financial hardship of itself won't give you a scholarship, because this is an elite program. It's intended to be an elite program to get the top students interested in enrolling. We've only got 50 full-time 1 year positions and 20 part-time positions to give 60 FTE overall for this elite program. But so academic excellence and a merit and in some cases perhaps financial hardship as well. So if you want to be considered for a scholarship, you need to submit a 2-page letter, less than 2 pages, together with your application, in providing a strong justification under either 1 or 2, or indeed both. Okay, next slide, please, slide 23. So apart from the wonderful scholarship program that we have, we've also got an excellent internship program. Now, the internship program, again, is where students from this program, and I think at the moment we can probably place every student in, or very close to every student in, an internship opportunity. You don't have to take an internship as enrolled students. These are just opportunities for you. And these internships are largely in the mainland, but also they will be in Padova, Sicily in Italy, and the National History Museum in the UK in London. The NHM is very well known, world famous institute. Why there? Well, they have one of the world's largest and most important collections of meteorites. And meteorites is part of this whole idea of the exploitation of asteroids in space in the future for resource needs. So that's one of the reasons there. Padova, Sicily, of course, is already a major partner, and they're building a lot of important satellites in Europe. So, but our mainland partners, we have the DFH company, BISME, Keqiang University, CSU, Shanghai Academy of Spaceflight Technology, and other companies like ASAS all have opportunities. BISME, for example, has promised to take 10 students for an 8 to 12 week internship over the summer, where they will provide accommodation, meals, and a small stipend. So this is the kind of internship opportunities we have been able to leverage with our major partners. So we've got scholarships and we've got these wonderful internship opportunities. Okay, Pablo, we're getting towards the end. The next slide is now, this is just to show you what motivated us to really push for this program is that when we consulted with the top places in the world, Stanford, California, Santa Cruz, other places around the world, what they thought of our proposal and on our outline of what we're offering, they were all extremely encouraging and encouraging us to get on and do an innovative approach. It's a very timely thing, strong and sound argument for starting such a program, strong support, strong recommendation, well balanced, excited, complementary, etc., etc. So you can see that this really encouraged us to believe that this is a big gap currently in Southeast Asia for a program such as this. It's the first time such a program will ever be offered in this part of the world. I'm sure it won't be the last, but will be the first at the best university in this part, in an excellent department, the Department of Physics. And so we're very proud to be able to put this program together. Huge thanks to Pablo and to Meng and others who have been part of this whole process. And so this is what we're offering. We think it's opportune, we think it's exciting, we think it's a wonderful opportunity for the elite students we hope to enroll, and so we commend it strongly to you. So thank you very much, and now I think we'll be going over to the application process on the last slide. And this is the formal last slide before we get to frequently answered questions. And this shows you what you actually need. Applicants should have a bachelor's degree in a relevant field if you're outside of Hong Kong U. If you're a Hong Kong U student, you're expected to have a BSc with honours. But other applicants can have a bachelor's degree where the GPA is strong enough that you could enter the program. And you can come from physics, astronomy, earth sciences, or engineering, aerospace, electrical or mechanical engineering, or indeed any field which we feel is sufficiently appropriate that we feel you could benefit from enrollment in this program. So you're looking at basic college level physics, mechanics, electricity, magnetism, college level mathematics, calculus, linear algebra, statistics, some computer programming, etc. So these are the kinds of students I think that will do best in wanting to enroll in our program, especially those also that might have an entrepreneurial flair. We're covering that through project management and entrepreneurship course. The most important dates there to take note of are the April the 29th of April if you're not from Hong Kong, and we have a later application date for June the 30th for Hong Kong residents. Now, these are our preliminary closing dates. Depending on enrollments and opportunity, we may have a second opportunity later on, but that's not guaranteed. But anyway, these are our closing dates for the moment. If you need to ask us questions or to contact us, we have a dedicated email, mspace@hongkongu.hk. If you want to find out more about this program, you have a web link there through the science faculty, and that's where all the science faculty TPGs are listed, including this one, which is the first one, as I said, the physics department is offering. So thank you very much for your attention, and that's it for me. So now we go to the frequently asked questions. So we'll have a break now to, pause to let students ask us some questions if there are any. So please don't be shy. Take the opportunity to ask Pablo and I, or if you prefer to speak in Mandarin, to speak to Meng or Xizong. So please go ahead. I can see there's a few more students who have now participated. About a dozen students, I think, are on. So please don't hesitate to ask us any question that may have popped into your head. We do have quite a lot of time set aside for questions. So I don't know, Pablo, if you think that while they're thinking about it, we can just go through some of the questions that students who are already enrolling have already asked us.
Yeah, so can you see that I put up the FAQ? Can you see it, the frequently asked questions?
Yes, I can see it. So that presumes that everybody else can. Can you see it, Abdi? Can you nod your head? Yes. Thank you, Abdi.
So yeah, these are questions that have actually come to us via email, mostly. So if you don't have any questions, we can read through some of them. So some people, yeah.
Do the first page. Another second.
So you want, or you can do it, Quentin. Either way, whatever you want.
Okay, so let's just start off with first the question that the student asked, the prospective student was wondering whether the majority of courses are offered in the evenings during the week and in the morning afternoons the weekend on the Saturdays in order to cater for part-time students, for example, or those that have got an employment elsewhere, have got other activities. And the answer to that is yes. We recognize this, and the intention is that we will lecture largely in the evenings and perhaps on Saturdays as well, but it will depend on the number of part-time students we eventually get. We are flexible in the mode of delivery in terms of the timing, but the intention certainly is to give every student the best chance to attend the lectures. There's nothing better than actually being present in the lectures when you can actually directly interact with some of these top scientists face to face and with your other students as well, and talk to them and form groups and discuss and everything. So that really is a huge strength of face-to-face lecturing. It's all very well doing Zoom from time to time, as we're all having to do now under this coronavirus, but eventually when things settle down, I think a face-to-face lectures is the go. So that was that first question. The second one was, will there be face-to-face participation for the tutorials? Well, again, yes, tutorials are best as an interactive, highly interactive, much more so than actually a lecture. And the tutorials will be offered, and they will depend on the course, of course, but they will be face-to-face. And it is important that you attend them if you can. Although, depending on your location, participation by Zoom, TikTok, or related technologies is certainly possible. So the third question that's related to the previous one is, are tutorials compulsory and how many will there be? Well, first of all, you're enrolling in this and you're paying good money to enroll in this taught postgraduate. So you need to be motivated to do it. So we're assuming that you'll turn up for the things. I mean, nothing technically is compulsory. We're not going to twist your arm to turn up. It's in your own best interest to turn up, because this is something that I presume you want to do, and you're putting your hard-earned coin over to Hong Kong U to enable you to do this taught postgraduate degree. So that's what we think there. But in terms of numbers of tutorials, it'll depend a bit, depending on the kind and structure of each course. It could be as low as 4, it could be as high as 8, but 6 is a typical number of tutorials you might expect for any one course. Another question is, are visits to the mainland required? Well, they're not required. They're not, you're not obligated to take any internship in the mainland or visit the mainland. Of course, we encourage you to do so because there's so many wonderful opportunities in the mainland. But there are opportunities elsewhere in the UK and in Italy, and indeed here in Hong Kong within the LSR, within Hong Kong U Faculty of Science. That's that. Another question was, when does the semester start and finish? Well, we're simply following the standard Hong Kong U semester timetable, which you see there, and the semester we start in is the September semester near the beginning of the month. But if you want to get the exact date, you can click on that link there, and that'll take you to the academic calendar for the 2020-2021 year. The next one is, I think we've already answered this during our discussion, presentation of the materials, was what are the number of students and how big will the class size be? Well, as I said, this is intended to be a very elite program to get the best students in. So we're hoping we'll have a large number of potential students wanting to enroll and select good students from that. But there'll be no more than 50 full-time students and 20 part-time students at this stage. So that's the intention at this stage. Okay, if you go to the next one, this is you can now do the second half, Pablo.
Okay, sure. So we've had questions from various students who are studying subjects that are not specifically mentioned in the application requirements. So someone were studying mathematics and they wondered whether they could apply. And the answer is yes. So it will depend, of course, on exactly what your degree is in. So mathematics is definitely one that we would consider. If you have, like, a student had a degree in mathematics with honors, that would definitely be a big plus. But basically, we're looking at the overall academic record. So there was another one who asked basically the same question, but they had a degree in geographic sciences. So again, we're encouraging people from a broad area of fields. And so we haven't listed every single type of degree that you could have. But essentially, if you're in the sciences or engineering, related engineering, you probably qualify. But it will depend on what exactly you did and how good your GPA was, etc. A student wanted to know whether internships are available for full-time students. And so the answer is yes, they'll be available for full-time and part-time students. However, only one internship is likely to be available over 2 years. So if you're doing this part-time, this means you're doing sort of 50-50. You might only get one internship guaranteed, but it'll depend how many internships we have. We're growing and these are increasing, so it's possible you could get it. Another student is asking about scholarships. Are these available only for full-time students? Or if no, what's the application criteria? So it's a good question, but if we expand the scholarship program for part-time students, then the scholarship amount would probably have to be half the second application. So obviously, if you're doing the degree part-time, you're also paying half the fees every year. So, but the application criteria are exactly the same. Essentially, academic merit and financial need. Another question is how do you apply for the scholarship? We've sort of mentioned this, but essentially you have to write a letter at most 2 pages. So don't just write a very long story, at least most 2 pages, describing or giving a strong justification why you need the scholarship and why you think you qualify. So both under criterion 1 or 2 or both. Another person wants to know the amount of the scholarships, and it's been discussed too, but I'll just say it again. So right now we have 8 to 10 scholarships, and this may increase. But the values of the scholarships will likely be around $50,000. And again, just to reiterate, they're going to be based on academic need, academic merit and hardship. So someone wants to know whether there's going to be an induction session for enrolled students at the beginning of the course. And yes, this will happen, and we'll send you details when we.
Okay, there's one more page, Pablo.
Yeah, I think we have more. Should we, anyone who has any question that we haven't covered should feel free to write it in the text if you like, in the chat, or come out with it. Again, it can be in English or Chinese. So please don't.
We will try to reproduce a version of this FAQs in Chinese.
Yes, we could do that. Okay, you want to do page 3?
Yeah, so there's one more final. Yeah, so one student was asking about these courses being taught in your MSc. Are these similar to the ones that our Department of Physics is already offering in Physics and Astronomy, taught between 2008 and 2017? I think that was a student interested in, was doing an astronomy major before. And the answer is no. This MSc is a brand new offering. It's not an astrophysics course, it's space science. And so you can see from the electives and the core subjects, what's on offer there. There's only really one that's doing some basic astronomy. Everything else is technology and engineering and entrepreneurship and some of the things like plasma physics and other things, but none really that was offered before in the astronomy honors. Next question was, will the MSc in space science qualify for the tertiary student finance scheme? Well, no, this is not a UGC program. It's a TPG, but there are scholarships available, as you know, which you can apply for. Next question from a student concerned, I've applied to the MSc in space science. so that we have some enrollments already. But my referees tell me they did not receive a referee link. How can they send their references? Well, the basic answer is that our program does not actually require reference letters. I mean, acceptance into the program depends basically on your academic merit, which is in your transcript, and your proven track record that might be in an associated CV. However, if you do want to include reference letters, which in some cases may help your case if you otherwise have some issues, then you follow the methods as detailed there, and I won't bother reading them out. You can just read them yourself, and you can actually upload those reference letters to the upload link provided there. Okay. Now, the key point at the end there is, please note the physics department will not view any documents emailed to us during the selection process. But this will be done perhaps by when we're coming to make a final choice and we've got some references, Pablo and I will look at them. Next is, can I examine in detail any of the course content now? And our answer to that is simply, you'll need to be an enrolled student to access course content. If we just made course content available, then people could just look at the courses and do the courses offline at their own pace, in their own way, without actually being formally enrolled, and get the knowledge and information and materials without actually having to enroll and pay the fees, etc. So obviously, this is a commercial activity in some sense, so that's not going to happen. And indeed, all our courses, like most at Hong Kong U anyway, are protected through the Moodle portal. Okay. Next question was, given the current situation with the coronavirus pandemic, and I hope everybody here is safe and well, by the way. I'm still under house quarantine because I've just come back from Europe, from France, just over 10 days ago. So I'm sort of 3 or 4 days left to go of my 2-week quarantine. Then I'll be out. But anyway, given the current situation with the coronavirus pandemic, will the courses still be offered face-to-face? Or will they be online instead? Well, really, it's too early to say. September's still quite a long way off. And I think that, the SAR of Hong Kong is actually relatively on top of this pandemic. And the world may certainly get on top of it like China has done in the next few months. And so it's too early to say, but we do hope that we can start as normal in September, because that's still several months away, and that the worst of the situation will be over by then. But that's what we hope to do. Okay. And then the final question, before we get on to a couple of questions about employment prospects, which I think a lot of people will be particularly interested in. The final question, again, is related to the coronavirus, is that it puts up special circumstances and considerations. For example, this student was not able to take the required English language exams, so will this disqualify that student from applying? So I think we're just going to be, flexible on this issue in this first instance, with the expectation that students who can't show it now will be able to demonstrate it later. So we could, in certain circumstances, waiver this requirement for English language, given the extremely challenging circumstances many of our applicants will have found themselves under in this global pandemic. Okay, so that's the end of those questions in that sense. And maybe, Pablo, you'd like to finish off by going through this last couple of questions on the very important issue of employment prospects.
Yeah, well, I think in a sense we've really covered these before, but I think we'll just to sort of briefly summarize the 2 points. So, of course, we've discussed the internship opportunities with the masters, and these will likely take place either between semesters, so let's say between the end of the first semester and Chinese New Year, and at the end of the summer, or at the end of the program during the summer. So there's 2 times when we envision these taking place. And we've secured many of these, as we've discussed, but the specifics have to be negotiated individually between the student and the sort of the people in our partners, if you like. So it's not one size fit all. So what we're providing in a sense is we're providing the connection, creating the opportunities for all our students to have connections with these strong partners who have a lot of potential internships. And then, of course, many of these will then want to hire people. So the belief, what we feel and our partners feel, and this is this is why they're so keen to provide internships, is that if you are in our program and you participate in one of these internships and it works out for you, then it's not just in your interest, but it's in the interest of our partners to actually hire you and employ you when you get out. So this is one of the main reasonings. So we're in a sense we're acting as a way to channel what we consider will be most likely very top students into these careers. And so we're the conduit to provide very, very good students with some training that we're going to provide, but into positions for these companies that we know, that we've built relationships with, and that will be very happy to probably offer many positions in the future. So I think that's pretty much the idea. And there's a list there of some of these companies and names that we've mentioned. These are some, as we've said, these are basically some of the major players in space science, China, and globally. So the Beijing Institute for Space Mechanics and Electricity, BISME, and SAS, the Shanghai Academy of Spaceflight Technology. These are two of the key divisions of China Aerospace. So they each employ about 15,000 people. And EFH Satellite Company that I mentioned earlier just built and launched a few months ago, the largest in China. And then the Center for Space Utilization of the Chinese Academy of Sciences that manages the Chinese space station. And of course, the lab in Padova CISAS, that has decades of experience in Europe, working with the European Space Agency, etc. And of course, last but not least, there's also potential internships here at the LSR in Hong Kong U. So we believe that there's a lot of opportunities, and one of the main things that we will be able to provide are the opportunities to connect with key leaders in the field of space science. So I think with that, I will sign off and again open it up for any questions that anyone has.
As far as I can see, there's only 3 students left, Pablo.
Yes.
Honor 8, LBB, and some.
Okay.
If any of those 3 remaining Zoom participants have any questions for us, now would be a great opportunity to ask. And if you prefer to speak in Mandarin, and of course, Meng or Shizhong can reply.
Sure. Any questions in Mandarin?
Oh, somebody's written a question from KW. Can I ask about how can I join IELTS test nowadays? Thanks a lot. So that's a sort of a text message that was sent by one of the participants at 4:47. So maybe I didn't. Yeah, the person was probably too shy to talk, but has left a message. So maybe we can find the details of that person from Lewis and contact that person directly, Pablo.
Okay.
Doesn't look like there are any others. Honor 8 Light, would you like to ask us anything at all, if you're still there? Hit LBB, would you like to ask us anything? We're very happy to try to help. Well, if not, then I think we can bring this this meeting to a close. I think what we'll do is we have the audio recording of this, Pablo, and we will make it available in some forum for people just to download the audio file and the intermediate resolution PDF file of the presentation, and then play the audio with the presentation if they want to.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.